Well, Bree Morris, we're sitting here in a gorgeous backdrop of Queenstown and the lake and everything else. A little bit of time off from racing. And a bit of time, I guess, to reflect on your first weekend of TRS and international racing. How was it?
My first weekend was definitely very learning curvy. Yeah, it was definitely a confidence builder. I did learn quite a bit and I'm starting to feel much more confident in a much faster car.
Was it what you expected? Because you did a test, and I know you're offered an FT50 test, but you wanted to get in the FT60. How physical, how tough, how rough on you was it?
I expected it to be physically harder. I'm not saying it wasn't easy, but it was definitely physically challenging, but I expected to not really be able to walk when I got out of the car. But the weekend was definitely, there was a lot more technical parts to it than I thought, and it was very well professionally run.
I saw you with your engineer a lot, and that's a good sign because it means you are serious, it means you are learning, and it means that you care. Why did you spend as much time, do you think, or was it normal for you?
Because there's so much to go over. Like it was a big track, so there's more corners to go over in a way, but I'm starting, as my partner says, I'm a small fish in a big pond, so yeah. I have to learn a lot of things compared to Formula Ford now.
What was the jump? You were a Formula Ford North Island champion. Big jump, surely.
Yeah. The biggest jump so far for me is believing in the aero. So in my Formula Ford, you had a lot of reference to when it was going to give up on you, but now you've just got to go in there, try it smidgen by smidgen, and you'll eventually find the limit, but it's just getting to that limit comfortably.
Now, we caught up back in September when you were putting the funds together. How did that go in the end? I can see you are, and I saw your suit, you've got plenty of sponsors. Talk about that and putting the budget together, because it's no mean feat, because Formula Ford versus TRS, big difference.
Yeah. Over my journey of finding the sponsorship for this series, I've been very lucky to have Dale ITM. I went into meeting Deb only expecting just a little bit of help, but I ended up having her as my main brand on my car, which is awesome, and it's awesome to be a part of the family, which we do call it a family. I also walked into the Tony Quinn Foundation meeting expecting just a meeting for them to get to know me, and I also walked out with them being a massive part of my journey, and I also wouldn't have been able to make it into this series without actually having the Kiwi Driver Fund behind me, so it's awesome to also have them.
Let's go back to the racing. What did you learn more than anything in this weekend, last weekend?
I was happy with how I ended the weekend on. My pace had improved by a mile since the day prior. Unhappy wise is how long it actually took me to get there, but another happy point is I'm proud of myself for actually being able to be here and race and get through these races, which are very physically demanding.
One thing I noticed which impressed me was you had an off in the third race, but instead of pulling off into the pits, you carried on and you got on with it and you shook it off, and that is a big factor.
Yeah, well, to me for that last race I was like, oh my goodness, I've made a massive improvement already. I actually wasn't too focused on my position, so that I'm not actually annoyed at myself in a way. I'm happy that I did actually improve.
You talked to me after the race and you said that over the 4 days, and it was a long 4 days, upper body was definitely sore. But I think that's probably because it's Highlands. It's a very, very technical, fast track. Teretonga, which you've raced at before, it's going to probably be easier, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's mainly just turn 2 that you have to really hold on. You sort of end up taking that left hand off and pushing the bottom of it up to stay around the corner and actually hug the corner still. But it was definitely not easy, yeah.
Looking ahead to Teretonga, what's your thoughts about that? Like I said, a bit more familiar territory in terms of Formula Ford. What do you think of that place?
Teretonga, I think I last raced there maybe 2 years ago now, but I think it's definitely more of a, not super high speed, but more of a flowy track, less stop-starty, so I think it will definitely, I'm hoping to be on the pace earlier than the last race from Highlands.
And have you set yourself any goals for this 5 weeks? I mean, it is all very new and it's a big step up. What have you given you? I mean, you're not too hard on yourself, but what do you want to...
Yeah, my goals are sort of not to put too much pressure on myself, to be honest. I'm taking it day by day, and I think I expected a little bit too much of myself out of the first round, as I am that small fish in the big pond, so I really do need to take a step back and think about my positives instead of the negatives out of the weekend, so I'm going by that, yeah.
And for those that don't know, I mean, there's a lot of new things coming at you. You're working with an engineer, you're working a lot longer with data, you've got radio contact, you've got different sets of tyres which you have to use at the right time. So there's a lot coming up at you, or coming at you, that isn't normal for your normal racing weekend.
Yeah. It's all a lot to take on at once. Like, it's great to be able to have the team that's coaching you through it, not you having to make the mistake and then fix it in a way.
And is there an area that you're still not good at yet? Feedback is the obvious thing. You've got to tell your engineer what you're feeling in the car. Do you struggle with that, or are you finding that comes naturally?
I think I've always had a good feel for what's happening. If you do get it wrong, sometimes it can show on the data. Like, I complained about understeer for a little bit, then realised I actually wasn't putting enough lock into the car early enough, so that was a surprise. I was like, oh, okay. I'll just sit back in my chair and actually look at the data more. Yeah.
And again, have you set goals for Teretonga?
My goal for Teretonga is going to be to be earlier on to the pace than I was at Highlands. So start where I finished.
And what about any of the tracks that you're looking forward to? Is there a track that you go, that's the one I know I've got down? Nope.
Nope. I think they're all going to come with all different challenges. I just can't wait for the double bastard at Hampton Downs. Fair
enough. It's got to be also exciting at 19 to be doing the New Zealand Grand Prix. You've probably grown up watching it and seen some of the great stars that have come through it. What will that mean to you?
Yeah, I think I'm slowly realising how lucky I actually am to be here in this series. A lot of people have that ambition to race in it. And I think it's definitely, like, my main goal out of the series is to create those contacts to be able to make that next step. And I think I'm so lucky to be here, to be able to have that opportunity to maybe even make that next step.
Well, you mentioned that. So what is that next step? You've got some sponsors now. You're on an international level, even though you're at home. Where do you see yourself in 3 years?
Ooh, there's so many different roads now to take. I personally don't want to label it directly, but where I see myself in the next 3 years is racing as a career overseas, and it could even maybe end up branching out to tin tops. I never know. I just really do want to have this as my career.
And I'm going to say, is there, let's just, throw out the sheet and reality and say, what do you if you could be given $1 million and you could do what you wanted, where would you like to see yourself?
Oh, is $1 million going to cut it these days?
No, probably not. All right, $10 million.
I'm too gobsmacked to even think about it. If I had $10 million right now, I think I would be racing F1. I don't even know if 10 million cuts the budget, but yeah, I think it's everyone's goal. It's the pedestal of, like, the top pedestal of racing. Like, it's so, and you can branch out to so many different kind of careers in a way also there, like, yeah.
And I know you're coming into international racing in an era, your teammate is in the W Series, so that, that's obvious, but you're in an era where women are first being noticed, but also being, I don't want to use the word segregated, but there seems to be, oh well, the women go that way and the men go that way. You don't like that, do you?
No, I feel like it's great creating that opportunity for us females, but it's also creating a segregation. And a lot of things I've bumped into is that, oh, these chicks aren't good, chuck them out with some guys and they'll be at the back of the dust. Like, I feel like we should be able to be funded into the series with also men. Like, we're all driving and we're all out there for the same point. And the magical thing about our motorsport is that we're equal, our genders can compete against each other.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not like skiing or tennis where, you know, you need physical strength for both those sports. But, you know, racing is racing, and you can do enough fitness where, you know, people like Chadwick and Calderon have proved it, you know, that you can be at absolutely the level. And I would argue, watching women's soccer, that women, it really surprised me. Women are more organised, they do listen to engineers, and they don't tend to be as hot-headed. So I actually think we've been missing a trick all this time.
Yeah, I don't know. I think us women are very more sensitive in a way, so we do take that criticism and do want to correct that. Like, we're big on that. So we have our pros and cons. Yeah, every driver has their pros and cons. It doesn't matter if you're a female or a male. Like, a male could have the same con as me, and I could have the same pro as a male.
Yep. Well, let's do a little bit more about you, because this is the first time I've spoken to you outside of the sort of parameters of a racetrack. We've got a fantastic setting, your home of New Zealand. Where are you from? And tell us a little bit about growing up here in New Zealand.
I'm a Jaffa. I'm an Aucklander. I would call myself more of a country Aucklander, though. I love being out where we are, which is close to Muriwai, Waimaku area. So I guess I did grow up on the North Shore, house to house. That wasn't really what I loved doing. I love being out free in the wilderness in a way. So yeah.
Brothers, sisters, family?
2 older brothers, mum and dad, and a younger sister.
No motor racing background?
My dad gave it a go, like racing, when we were kids, but he did have to give it up to have us kids.
Yeah.
My family is big into their speedway. Dad's amazing. He is very mechanically minded with his speedway also. He's been my mechanic up until now, which feels very weird, but good, but weird. Yeah.
So, like I said, not a natural family. You're not from, you know, a history of racing. So where did you get the bug? You showed me a photo the other day of you literally sitting in a go-kart when you were probably about 2.
Yeah. Our family friends, the Herberts, Chelsea and Joel, were karting, and I think Dad used to work with Mark, their parents. And one day, I don't know how it went about because I was so young and it's so long ago now, but the one thing I do remember being there is Chelsea actually saying I had very small hands and my hands didn't fit into the gloves. But yeah, it started out at Mount Wellington Have-A-Go track, and it was, I remember it as a very fast, magical day, but I remember looking back at videos and it was a very slow putt around the track. But yeah, ever since then I've loved it.
I met you when you were just starting out in Formula First, and you know, you were mid-pack, you were sort of, you know, trying to get to the front, but you weren't there yet. You were, you know, making the obvious mistakes that young people make when they're starting out. Has it surprised you how quickly you've got up to this level?
Yeah, I think I'm back at that learning game where I was in Formula First again, because it's such a big step from Formula 4 to where I am. But I do think you do have to start at the bottom again to be able to get back to that top step in a way.
So you went to school, obviously, like everybody goes to school, but did you always, in your last interview I heard you say that you kind of live and breathe the sport, you get up every morning, that's what you want to do. So when did that happen?
That happened when my parents said to me, end of summer, you have to get a job. So I ended up working about 30 hours at a supermarket, and I
Give them a plug.
Pardon?
Give them a plug.
Yeah, in my blood.
No, and you give them a plug. Which supermarket?
Oh. Fresh choice by Malku. Yeah, it was great there. It did teach me a lot of being a grown-up for once, and a lot of I found determination there because it was working. I wanted to do better, and then I got to the point of I was still racing, but it was off season. So I sort of thought to myself, I was like, oh my goodness, like my season's coming up. I need to find a sponsorship. I need to do this full time. So that's when I said to myself, now it's time to leave the supermarket, live off of your savings, and put the full effort into racing.
I mean, when I was a kid at 13, I was going to be a rock star, and I told everybody, and they laughed at me. And then I got to 18, and I was working. I remember this distinctly. I was at college, and I just graduated, but I graduated in broadcast journalism, and I was making sandwiches in this deli, working with these two little old ladies. And they said, oh, you got to do this. I said, oh, well, I'm going to be working in TV soon. And they just laughed, and they said, yeah, just shut up and make the sandwiches. Did you have a little bit of that when you said that's what you wanted to do?
I had one scenario when I was younger. I was at an all-girls school.
Yeah.
I felt like every time I brought up my motorsport, I got towered over and got laughed at in a way. So I sort of bottled it up and never really spoke to many people about it, to be honest. I speak about it a lot in my motorsport scenario, like scene, but school-wise, not many people knew what I was doing, not many people knew how good my achievements were, so I kept it in my motorsport scene.
So do you feel more comfortable then when you're at a track talking to Tom Alexander or Tony Quinn or whatever, because they get it?
Yep, if you chuck me in a room full of teenage kids from school, I think I go and hide in the corner, in all honesty. I can't, I don't have anything to talk about with them. I get very, I don't have a lot of friends out of motorsport, to be honest. I thrive in the motorsport scene, but then also you've got the female, like, the boys also, it's hard to feel included sometimes with the guys in a way.
Were you a sportsman in any way at school?
Yeah, I tried everything. Football, water polo, flipper ball. Hockey didn't really end out well. Loved volleyball, touch rugby, ripper rugby, everything. I loved rugby, but Mum said no.
Were you any good at any of them?
I think I was never amazing, but never below average. I was good enough in my netball, but I didn't have the time to put as much as I should have put into it, because I had more so my motorsport that I put a lot of time into.
You told me you have dyslexia, but you never know. How has it been for you, and how does it affect you?
My dyslexia affects me in more so reading and having that more. My words are simple; they're not super expanded. Like every time I learn new things, the words are like, oh my goodness, I've never heard that word. I don't understand that word. School was a struggle. I never excelled in school unless you chucked me in hard materials class, or basically hard materials class. Anything to do with my hands and working with hard materials was basically my strength. Yeah.
Well, that strikes me. I mean, I know that Jackie Stewart, who was a Formula One world champion many times over, was also suffered from school from dyslexia, and he said he was almost drummed out of school because of it, and it made him very shy because he felt so self-conscious about it. But he said in motor racing, when the process was all about his own mind and what he wanted to risk and what he wanted to do, he was comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. You have certain things where if you're sitting with data with me, I come up with the most randomest words to put in there for a description, and I sort of get looked at and like, okay, like you need to expand on your knowledge. So I'm learning their words, they're learning my words on how I feel the car responds. So it has its pros and cons, but I feel like dyslexia creates such a unique way for you to think about things, because you come up with so many different scenarios and situations in your head.
I think one of the misinterpretations of motor racing is that it's full of adrenaline junkies. and I've not met one yet in 30 years of motor racing. So, and what I mean by that is, for those watching this who aren't motor racing nuts, you already mentioned that you were keen on rugby, which shows you've got no fear, but that's a factor, no fear. So tell me a little bit about the dangers that you undertake and why you're comfortable with.
We're so safe in the cars, in all honesty. It's like, you know, when you go swimming in the ocean and it's like, oh, you've got more chance of crashing your car on the road than being eaten by a shark. I'm more scared of sharks than race cars, in all honesty. So we've grown up around it. We don't know any fear, but like now that I'm growing up and watching more things on the internet, I'm more scared to jump on a roller coaster now. I'm more scared to swim in the ocean. I'm more scared to do those things, but I've never had any fear with motorsport. So
I know it's a cliche, but I got to ask: is there anybody in the world of motor racing, Kiwi or not, that you look up to? I'll wait for the helicopter. But look up to, are inspired by, or like the style about which they go about their racing? Because racing on the track, you guys are all within 2 or 3 tenths of each other. So that what makes you stand out, perhaps, as an individual is who you are. Is there anybody you think, yeah, he's got it right, she's got it right, whatever?
I don't have anyone in particular. I like how different people express who they are and what they believe in. I think that's a big part of who you are. I also very much look up to people who have made it from the bottom, like come and worked for their career from the bottom, like found the sponsorship as a young kid and started to learn that way instead of having a lot of things given to them, because I come from that kind of aspect in a way. But yeah, I think it's really important that you carry through who you are and also show what you believe in through. Yeah.
And if you could, regardless of how far you make it, would you like to give back? Would you like to inspire other sportswomen, other sportsmen to be involved in the sport that you love and try to show them why you love it and help them in some way?
Yeah. Of course I want to create that inspiration for anyone that's trying to do this, from a young kid to if you're 19 now and you want to do it. I also want to give back in different ways into things that I also believe in, like in terms of how I have a special needs brother. If I ever get to the point where I'm comfortable in life and I can give back and help him out, like that would be absolutely amazing for me, because there's sides of people's backgrounds that you don't see. So I also push for this career in a way so I can give back to the people that have also made it capable for me to get where I am.
Nice. And Bree, finally, obviously you mentioned the sponsors. You know, they've invested in you. You push for them to invest in you. What do you think? Because you're not going to, you know, it's your first time at DRS. No one's expecting you to win the championship. But what expectations would you be happy that you've satisfied the investment in you?
I think I'll be satisfied with if my sponsors are satisfied and if I've over-delivered in a way for them. Also, as I hope that I don't deliver in, I want to deliver in experience, not results. Yeah.
Alright, say it again so you've got it clear, because that was good. So let me ask you again. So yeah, they've got a lot of investment in you. What would you be happy with?
Yeah, so with my sponsors, I want to deliver everything I can. I'm at this point where I know that I want to deliver on their experience with me and how I have built up their brand in a way in motorsport for them, rather than my results.
And finally, Bree, how exciting is this? You're 19, you're racing cars, come on, you're living the dream.
Yeah, I think I love my job, my career. It's definitely exciting and it's definitely so stressful sometimes.
Is it mentally fatiguing? That to me is something that no one seems to really give any thought to. just how hard this 5 weeks will be on your head.
Yeah. It's mentally fatiguing to remember to do everything. I think I had a point in the container at the track where I was like, oh, Mum, I'm going to shed some tears, like I have to do everything, and I'm trying to drive, like I just need to do to sew on some sponsor patches. Like it's so, there's so much behind the scenes. Like I know your biggest thing to focus on is racing when you're at the track, but you also have to focus on delivering that experience to your sponsors.
I'll bet you're one of those drivers, and I know I would be, if when you put that visor down and you go out that pit lane, you just go, oh, I'm on my own doing what I love. All the rubbish, all the problems, whatever they might be, are gone, and you do what you love.
I think I've always been able to shut that part out. Like as soon as I'm in the car, it's like I've got no worries in the back of my head. The only worry is how am I going to get up the line hill? What about turn one? No one's going to pile into any. Yeah, those are the only worries when you're out on track. It's just driving.
But that's like therapy, isn't it? It's like it's a concentration. Your mind is set. Your life is on the line, and you haven't got time to worry about whether you pack all your gear for the trip or whatever, have you?
No. But remembering to pack everything before the trip is a whole like 2-week experience up to the packing experience. Like it's not a day experience. It's definitely writing on the notes, okay, this and that. All right, I don't know. If I forgot something, it would be the end of the world.
Well, listen, it's certainly far from the end of the world, even though you're going to the end of the world, which is Invercargill, to race this weekend. Come on, what do you reckon your best result could be? What are we shooting for?
We're not going off of results.
Okay.
That's my one thing I've promised to myself. I'm not pushing myself on results because you can always... It's the uncontrollable. Mm-hmm. I only want to place goals on what are controllable.
Perfect, Anne. Thank you so much, Bree. We'll catch up with you again at Invercargill, probably after practice or so, and we'll keep talking. Thanks for talking to us.
Sounds great. Thank you.